This next guest coming over from Action Network, one of the sharpest guys I know in Major League Baseball, Sean Zerillo, joining the webinar. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Ariel. How you doing?
Great. Good to see you. Excited for opening night?
I am excited and I actually have a bet on your Yankees. So normally would be agnostic about this game, but actually found it was one of my biggest edges on the following 3-day slate, the first 15 games that we have with lines
Money
available.
line?
So just the Yankees and the Twins, my money line bet so far.
Ooh, okay. That's a good place to start. Money lines. Is that the way you enjoy betting sides in baseball, or are you a run line guy?
No, I mostly bet money lines. If I am taking a run line, it's typically a reverse run line on an underdog that I think can cover the 1.5, and it's usually correlated to the edge that I'm already showing on the money line. But by and large, I keep it relatively simple. Money lines, totals. I do project out first 5 money lines and totals. In fact, I would say the first 5 money lines probably the sharpest part of my model, specifically because I know who's going to be in the game. Essentially for the pitching side, I can predict, with near 100% certainty, at least for the first 3-4 innings, who's going to be in the game for that team on the mound. And as a result, you can factor for the splits. There's, all the pairing data that you have along with it. Once you get into the final 4 innings of the game, that's where you don't know what decisions the manager is going to make. You can try to figure it out to the best of your abilities. But yeah, I generally stick to first 5 full game money lines and then full game totals as well. I find actually a little bit of difficulty projecting out the first 5 totals just because of the times through the order stuff for the starting pitchers. So over time, I've not found them super profitable relative to my numbers, but first 5 money lines, first 5 or in full game money lines and totals, mostly where my action is.
The reason I did this webinar is because I think a lot of people need refreshers before going into the start of any season. And sometimes people forget how they handicap. What goes into your handicap of MLB money lines?
Yeah, so I have a data model that's, basically pulling in aggregated projections from multiple different data sources that you'll find out there. Derek Carty's Bad X, ATC, which I think is one of the best ones, that's already aggregating all of the projection systems, weighting them. But there's a number of different ones you can use. Pacoda, everybody's familiar with all the different sources. It's run through a data model. It tries to keep me as unbiased as possible. I do have to adjust for weather, certain things like that. But I've basically had the tool essentially automated, built out over 5 years. And I think the main data points in it, that anybody can find is weighted on base average, I think is the most important data point for hitters. You can also incorporate splits, WRC plus versus righties and lefties. There's not just their actual results. If you pay for a FanGraphs subscription, you can get projected steamer WRC plus against righties and lefties, because I do think there's a lot of noise and short-term sample stats for how players perform against right-handed and left-handed pitching. I think having a projected split to go back to, even beyond their career split, is actually super useful as sort of a stable data point to use. Strikeout minus walk rate for pitchers, incredibly useful, but also, the expected metrics on top of that, Sierra, expected FIP, xERA. I think all of the expected indicator data that you can have that you can layer in to just kind of filter out the noise and the luck and the randomness of this amazing game can help you figure out where players may be over or undervalued, both from a prop perspective, a fantasy perspective, or handicapping specific games. So those are the main data points for hitters and pitchers. I think beyond where my model goes, where my model finds value, I incorporate a defensive rating for every player. I incorporate base running for every player. I've tried to nail down like every single aspect of what would go into scoring runs or preventing runs for either team. Starting to get a little bit more StatCast data folded in there as well. And I've talked about it in a lot of places, but the next step I think is incorporating swing decisions, and not just like whether guys are making contact or, the expected results that they should have, but the expected results that they may have by making better decisions about whether to swing or not. There's a lot of value in that. You could see it philosophically with teams like the Blue Jays not striking out last year, making it all the way to the World Series. That was a philosophical adjustment. And, the other stat I want to mention just specifically for hitters, or kind of stabilizes for pitchers too, the one data point that you can really find value in early, that there's a lot of signal in early, is strikeout rate. Strikeout rate stabilizes after 80 plate appearances, 100 plate appearances. So by the end of April, you look at the strikeout rate for a hitter, you look at the strikeout rate for a pitcher, and it's drastically different relative to the career norm one, it's probably going to stay in that range, but two, you can probably find an underlying reason for that change. It could be a new pitch. It could be increased velocity. It could be, a mechanical change that they made. So finding that the strikeout rate early, the walk rates relatively early, and figuring out why and what changed, I think can be really valuable. And you can infer other things from it. If Jack Haggs on the Royals, who has a ton of power, stops striking out as much, if he cuts his strikeout rate by 5-10%, you see that after a month, but the home runs haven't come yet. It's still a really good indicator that he's gone up a level.
How do you differentiate between wanting to bet first 5 money lines versus full game money lines?
Yeah, it's mostly where the bigger edge is going to be relative to the market. If I show a 3% gap on the full game and a 5% edge on the first 5, it's much likelier that my full game edge is assuming that first 5 edge too, right? There's such a strong correlation between that pitcher winning the first 5 innings and them holding on to win the full game that your opinion is essentially that first 5 opinion. So why are you factoring in the bullpen when it's not as strong of a factor in that overall edge? So yeah, I think generally you'll find the edges correlate, but if the edge is bigger on one side of the game, it's likelier that your opinion is probably anchored to that half.
It's funny. You said first 5 totals are hard for your model. You just figure full game is better. And for me, full game sometimes freaks me out because of the bullpen. Whereas first 5, I feel, okay, I know that I like this pitcher matchup with this lineup, etc. Why or how do you handicap full game totals?
So I go through every bullpen every night. I'm looking for reliever usage, relievers who have thrown, X number of pitches in the past 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, etc. I have a tiredness multiplier that I can put on them, but also I'll just pull relievers out of bullpens for opening day. It's pretty easy because I just kind of assume the top 5 or 6 relievers, top 4 to 6 relievers are going to go in any of these.
Which doesn't exist on the Yankees, by the way, but continue. Just kidding.
No, I completely agree. So it's bullpen manicuring and being certain that the pitcher usage behind the starter is what I expect it to be. But beyond that, weather is, the humongous aspect of it. I think the Cubs game tomorrow at Wrigley Field is a phenomenal example. Wrigley Field is always, the most fluctuable park depending on wind and weather. Wrigley Field.
Hence it being the last total on the board every day.
Yeah, typically every day. But because these games have been out since Sunday, the totals came out Monday. They want people to get action down. They put out an early total on Wrigley, which is something we never get. Now, there are websites that track weather. There's supposed to be a big storm in Chicago tomorrow. The wind is expected in the morning to be blowing out at the park. And then after the storm comes, it's expected to flip the wind and bring it in. That total opened at 9. And I think after more people investigated the forecast for tomorrow, it ended up moving all the way down to 8. So weather is a humongous part of the handicap for all outdoor parks, but particularly at Wrigley Field. And you never get the opportunity to bet a Wrigley Field total that far out. But it was a good example of there was information asymmetry. If you did some investigation into the storm and the morning weather as opposed to the evening weather, you may have realized that there was just a complete difference in the forecast.
So tonight you said that you have a money line bet, Yankees money line. Would you get that at like minus 122?
Yeah, so I had it filled at a domestic book at minus 120, but I also have people helping me automate some prediction market trading stuff, and we ended up filling that at like minus 115. So I'm pretty happy with that price.
Tonight that made you like them?
Mostly the price. I just made them closer to minus 140. They do have like 6 of the top 9 relievers projected in the game. They typically do hit well against ground ball oriented pitchers. Like the tilt of Fried against Webb seems to favor the Yankees offense. But I mean, Yankees 7 out of their 9 hitters project better against righties than left, or I should say they project as above average hitters against righties. Half of the Giants lineup gets suppressed by left-handed pitching. So I'd assume that Hedrick will be another option behind Fried to potentially suppress the left-handed bats, Arise and Devers at the top of the Giants lineup. My main thesis, though, with the Giants this year and why I'm probably down on them in this game specifically, Webb is a ground ball pitcher. 3 of their 4 defensive infielders are terrible fielders. Matt Chapman's a great fielder. Adames, Arise, Devers, all below average defenders last year. I know Adames seems like he'd be a great fielder. He actually grades out pretty terribly. So the Yankees have a big athleticism advantage in this game. Much better team and a much better defensive team too. I know that's crazy to say, but it is true in this matchup.
I think I've talked a lot of crap about the Yankees in the season hasn't even started yet, and I have talked crap about them all day. I'm a Yankees fan. Whatever. Sean Zerillo, Action Network can never talk any crap about you. What are you going to be doing this season for Action?
Yeah, I'll have payoff pitch every Monday, Tuesday, Friday on your podcast feeds, and then opening pitch every Monday through Friday. I'll have an article basically going through my top 3 to 5 edges of that particular day. You can find all my bets in the Action Network app for free, and all my projections are both in the app and on our website.